He's always the first to arrive and often the last to leave. When the stage is still empty, when the blood has dried, when only silence and bodies remain, it's his turn to enter. His name is Gilles. Former forensic police officer, for over 30 years he worked on the worst crime scenes in France. The Paris attacks, the Bataclan, Charlie Hebdo, the German Wings plane crash, the tsunami in Thailand. Wherever there were deaths, someone had to understand. His job was to make crime scenes speak, to read what others no longer see. A detail, a trace, a fingerprint, everything can change. But how do you keep a cool head in the middle of all that blood and those bodies? How do you sleep after seeing all that? And above all, how far can a human being go to seek the truth? Attacks, natural disasters. He saw what death does to the body and what horror does to the living. Tonight, exclusively for Storycube, he opens his most significant files, the investigations, the images, the smells, the moments that are never told. Make yourself comfortable, turn off the lights, and get ready to dive into a profession where every detail matters and where the truth hides among the dead. Welcome to a new Storycube episode, True Crime Edition.
Hello everyone, today on Storycube we're welcoming Gilles, a former forensic police officer. He spent years handling France's major crime scenes, murders, terrorist attacks, disasters, and tough investigations. His job was to identify bodies, analyze all details and fingerprints to understand events and provide as much information as possible. He was also in the unit that identified disaster victims, where the work is both human and technical. Gilles, welcome to Storycube. Glad to have you. How are you?
Thank you, Noah. Thank you for inviting me.
Gilles, did you recently write a book called Among the Dead?
That's right.
What's it about, generally speaking?
The techniques for identifying disaster victims, because as a crime scene technician, which I was for a very long time, when we go to the scenes, we have 1, 2, 3 bodies. It's pretty standard, pretty simple, if I may say so. On the other hand, identifying mass victims, like in plane crashes, tsunamis, or the Paris attacks, as we've experienced, that's a whole different ballgame, and there are very precise protocols. So I suggested this to Jacques Dallesté, and that's how it happened. This book came to be.
Interesting. What kinds of conditions have you seen when you encounter corpses? What states do you find them in? Have you ever come across a completely, decomposed corpse? What are some of the... Are you sure?
Well, first, it depends if it's indoors or outdoors. I've had all kinds, obviously. When you have a fresh corpse, for example, because the death just happened. So in that case, there's no particular problem. But I also had the case of an old lady who had been dead for several years, who was, she was at home and she was lying on a small camp bed, even though her regular bed was in the room. She had a little bed next to it, a small camp bed, she died there. She was completely mummified like a pharaoh, you see, with skin on her bones. No one cared for her because she was alone without family or support. The mail was left there, and once the mailbox was full, they would put it under the mailbox, under the door. And so that's how it was.
How did we end up going to her place to look for her?
At some point, the bills stop being paid, or the building managers start to worry. At some point, after repeatedly following up with people, they start to wonder what's going on. For her, that's what happened. But people can get worried too. I also had a case where the building caretaker was filling in for the main caretaker who was on summer vacation at home. So he was the one filling in during the summer. He had been killed by the main caretaker's boyfriend, who took advantage of her absence, and that this new guy delivered the mail because he would go into the apartments. He had the keys. He would go into the apartments to leave the mail on the tables. And it was a beautiful apartment where there were master paintings on the walls, of very great value. He had killed this new caretaker on the bed in the owner's bedroom there. And he had taken down some paintings. He took them to sell them to fences, actually. The body had been there for days, it was summer, and in that case, the smells coming from a decomposing body are often very, very strong. And then the neighbors downstairs had called the firefighters saying, something's going on. It was the firefighters checking and helping people who found the body.
Do you take special precautions with bodies like that?
Of course. First of all, often it's all these suspicious deaths or things like that. We follow standard precautions, including personal protective equipment, white suits with hoods, gloves, masks, shoe covers, so that we don't contaminate the scene when we arrive.
It's nothing like in the movies where they show up. In movies, they often have nothing. They just show up and look around. In real life, they're all suited up.
Yes, yes, yeah. In movies, they have nothing because cinematographically, you have to admit,
It's annoying,
you have to recognize the star.
but in real life, actually, we don't recognize them.
In real life, at major crime scenes or events like the Paris attacks, we write our first names or department on our backs with a big marker. Oh, damn. Everyone's wearing white here, but with 3 people in a regular team, you know who's who. When 3 of us go out, everyone knows each other. We're one unit. But when there are dozens of people at huge crime scenes from different units that we don't know either, so in that case, everyone writes their first name and their unit on their back with big markers. So you can know where the photographer is, where the evidence collector is. Oh, that guy is from the investigation unit and so on, you see.
Have you ever had crime scenes involving suicides or similar cases?
Oh, with suicides? Yes, it's common. We've had people jump from windows. Once someone jumped from the top of the Montparnasse Tower onto the plaza.
That tower is huge.
Oh yeah, it's huge. I can tell you, that's for sure.
When you get to the ground, there's nothing left.
Well, yes. He was whole like that. He wasn't dislocated. The body was still whole, but completely smashed. Yes, smashed, completely smashed. We had someone like that who jumped from a crane, who climbed up a crane far from a construction site and jumped. People who commit suicide with weapons they have at home by hanging, so...
Even in France, people who have weapons, real weapons or...
Yes. The grandfather I'm talking about, and remember, he's a grandpa who had a World War II weapon. We actually had the greatest difficulty securing it because we didn't know it and we had never had one before.
It was an old...
So you don't know where the safety feature is. He killed himself after his wife died. Alone and struggling, he wasn't doing well. And so that's it, he was done, he ended his life like that.
Have you seen other weapons or similar things?
There have been weapons, yes, because there are hunters. And then you have weapons that are allowed for those who do shooting, sport shooting or shooting in a club. So they have permission to carry and keep weapons at home, you know.
What's usually the most common case you see when someone takes their own life? Is it just by hanging or is it...
Yeah, hanging, that's right. Or drowning too, people who throw themselves into the river as well, that happens, you know. And then there's also you have to be careful because you might find someone and at first think it's a suicide, but it's actually a crime disguised as a suicide.
Has that ever happened to you, hearing things like that?
So yeah, once. I had that happen once. A woman who was found in her bathroom. We were lucky, that's how it happened. She was found naked in her bathroom. We might think she took a bath and died like that, but she's quite young. We do all the investigations, we send it for visual inspection. Sometimes visible red marks or signs of strangulation can cause concern and raise a red flag. Or you might find bullet wounds or stab marks, like things like that. But here, there was nothing at all. We didn't see anything unusual. And I didn't think that this person, I was more thinking it was a natural death or something like that had happened to them. My colleagues, however, favored a criminal case.
Okay, why? Did something make them think that?
No, well, because they had doubts. They just had a feeling like that. And the next day, during the autopsy, the medical examiner determined that she had been strangled. Because we have a small bone at the level of the trachea, which is the hyoid bone, and it's fractured. It can't be fractured. If you try to strangle yourself, you'll never be able to break it. It really has to be someone else who does it. And so if this bone is fractured, it's automatically due to strangulation as determined the next day. So they were right.
And in the end, we know that it was, what was it, a German, it was...
Yes, that's it. That's how it ended. It was a case that lasted a very long time.
You also talk about Charlie Hebdo in your book.
Maybe already, I think most people know what happened, but maybe we can have a little recap, a bit about what really happened at that time. What was the...
So Charlie Hebdo, that's the first attacks. It dates back to, it was a Wednesday, January 7, 2015, and that was the first series of attacks we had in Paris.
2 brothers attacked the editorial staff of the satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo. They went in looking for the Charlie Hebdo offices because they're not visible, they're not easy to identify, the offices are like that. They searched, went to the wrong floor and met cartoonist Coco on their way down. She was forced under threat from armed men with Kalashnikovs to open the door and enter the code. That's when they went in. And since there was an editorial meeting going on, they killed the people who were there actually.
So they shoot up the room.
They shoot in the editorial room, they murder them, they gun them down with their Kalashnikovs.
The girl who led them to that place too?
No, the girl, she's alive. She's still here among us, fortunately. And that's it. There were also some injured people who made it. An information technology specialist who also worked in an office when he arrived there, and so that's terrible. But they had also killed, before going upstairs, they had killed a maintenance technician who was on the ground floor working in a room. And when he comes out, they will be chased. There are some bike patrol colleagues who saw what happened and who show up over there. When they come out, they spray the area around the premises with Kalashnikov fire. They're going to get back in their car and head on to Boulevard Richard Lenoir, and then the colleagues will start chasing them. They'll cross the square on Boulevard Richard Lenoir, and they'll end up face to face with them, and a colleague who will be there will be shot by the two brothers, and that's how it starts.
Did you know this person?
No, I didn't know him, and so they're going to leave. And a third individual on his own will also carry out an attack the very next day. He will kill municipal police officer Clarissa Jean-Philippe in Montrouge, then leave and abandon the scene. Some items, like a balaclava, he'll be identified by DNA. While the two brothers from Charlie Hebdo had abandoned their car, which they had crashed on Rue de Meaux, that was it. And inside the car, they found their DNA, and on top of that, their identification cards, etc. So, and actually, these three know each other.
Okay.
While the two brothers leave and go on their journey outside, they're being chased. Obviously, the one who also committed the Montrouge crime. And on Friday, 2 days later, a final assault will occur. The Montrouge terrorist will enter the hypercacher, where he will also kill 4 people and take hostages. And the two brothers will end up in a printing shop in Dammartin-en-Goële, and they'll be taken care of by the Groupe d'Intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale, who will neutralize them. And the one at the hypercacher will be neutralized by the research, assistance, intervention, deterrence, who will storm the place, who will also storm the place. The hypercacher, what is it? Is it a... The hypercacher is a store that sells kosher products, actually.
So were you mobilized at that moment?
We're mobilized all the time since we go to crime scenes in the first place, and in this case, we had a series of crime scenes on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so we're mobilized every time. And at the final assault, we wait, as we usually do, for the final assault to be launched, for everything to be secured so we can intervene and deploy our teams to the different crime scenes. Same there. We'll make plans, take photos and videos, and collect samples to identify everyone.
What happens at Charlie Hebdo first? What do you see and find?
When we arrive at Charlie Hebdo, it's a scene of total chaos. It's a room that's maybe a bit bigger than this studio, but where you have all the bodies tangled together, disfigured. I can't recognize them, even though normally they're well-known people. From the world of journalism or cartoonists, we know well, and that's it, really.
Is anyone alive in the room?
Yes, there are survivors, who will give their location and who will help the investigators to be able to identify them. They will be identified at the Minico Legal Institute. But it's a scene, yes, a terrible scene. We're not used to that. It's a massacre scene. It's not a crime like you might think. Ah, well, yes, a crime of jealousy, of interest, etc. No, here, it's a massacre scene due to the ideology of terrorists who come for that.
When you arrive at scenes like this, what do you take pictures of? Is it the places where they're injured? Is that all?
So we do everything. There's a basic protocol, whether it's for a regular scene or for a scene like this. We arrive, we secure the scene, we put protocols in place, we secure the scene, we determine the areas we're going to investigate. People gear up so as not to contaminate the scene, meaning not to bring in things from outside that could contaminate it. Bringing in DNA, hair, chewing gum we might have stepped on. That's more than enough here. It's already complicated enough without adding anything else. Then we'll document the scene as found using photos, videos, 3D panoramas, or room scans. Later, specific software will combine everything to recreate how we found it. Like in a video game where you move between rooms, zoom in, and examine the floor. It provides object dimensions and sizes and is very well done. And then after that, there will be all the samples, all the biological samples, the fingerprint traces, so the prints that can be found, the objects that will need to be brought back to the department because there are objects on which we can't search for traces. With our powders and brushes, like you often see in movies, we'll have to bring back certain objects, anything that's a weapon or pieces of plastic and so on. to do physico-chemical analyses in our laboratories.
Okay, yeah, you can't just collect things like that.
No, we can't because the techniques aren't suitable. There are chemical techniques to use in fume hoods, in confined spaces, etc.
In television shows, often you see people, it's stupid, but sometimes they take a flashlight like this, a blue one.
So that, obviously, that exists. We have the first phase of investigation. It's also with lights to be able to determine on the ground, because here, for example, everything is clean, everything is white, you can't see anything. But if we put the room in the dark and shine different wavelengths of light on the floor, we'll see hairs, fibers, footprints, and so on. And so that allows us to measure them, photograph them, collect them, package them, and then send them to the laboratories.
So that's not just in the movies?
No, it's true. These are crimscopes or crim lights, which have different wavelengths, for example, these different wavelengths. To be able to, so as I was telling you, use white lights that will make footprints or fibers or hairs appear, but other wavelengths will be able to shine on fabrics and reveal traces of semen because it fluoresces at certain wavelengths. Or, for example, in white gravel, if you're in a passageway and there's only white gravel, you can't see anything at all. But with these wavelengths, some stones will be much brighter and much more fluorescent than others. When you pick them up, they're not stones, but bones, which will also fluoresce and stand out from the stones.
Have you ever found things like that, traces?
Of course, we do it systematically. Yes, of course, yes. And also, for example, we can find erased traces of blood. That is with luminol, which is a blue star spray. We call it blue star. We do the same. We lower the light, the intensity of the light. And when we spray it on areas that look clean, well, we'll see bluish spots. Kind of like in the studio here, you see. There will be a bluish fluorescence from traces, for example. And so we'll see that there's an erased trace that was at that spot. And so with a swab, we can take a sample from that area, determine that it really is blood. And once we've determined that it really is human blood and not animal, because for us, only human blood is of interest, to look for DNA in that blood.
Have you ever made discoveries with that or tried to trace something?
Yes, of course. Traces of bodies that had been moved in a hallway, that had been killed in one place and were found over there. But the problem was they hadn't been killed there and we didn't understand why. While researching, we noticed it had been moved, yes.
Are there other techniques like that you use? Or for example, when it comes to finding fingerprints, does it really work? Can you really find? Movies sometimes show techniques for revealing fingerprints on hands instantly. With this?
Yes, fingerprints are simple, a technique used since 1892. It's been 130 years now, so there are powders. But what are fingerprints? It's a pattern we have at the tips of our fingers or inside our palms and even under the soles of our feet. We also have these patterns. When we touch something, the ridges on our fingers make this pattern. There are micropores that constantly let sweat through, micro droplets of water that we can't see with the naked eye. And when we leave our fingers, we leave a whole pattern made of micro droplets of sweat and grease and water, actually. So, what is it about? To recover a fingerprint, it's about making it visible with color. And to make it visible with color, we have powders that stick to the micro droplets of water and reveal the pattern. And depending on the surface, if it's a light surface, we'll use dark powders. If it's a dark surface, we'll use light powders. There are powders of all colors, pink, yellow, green. It all depends on what we're looking for.
Do you have to leave your hand there for a long time to get a fingerprint? If you just do it like this, for example, is my fingerprint on it now?
Well, in this case, no, there probably won't be one. Because you rubbed it like that, the print won't be clear. However, you probably did leave some skin cells behind. And if we do what we now call a contact trace with a swab, we saw you do it. A camera caught everything. We found your shoe after you left. It's here. You left without it, but we noticed you had rubbed it. In that area, we're going to look for a footprint. We might not find it, but we'll see that there's a sliding mark. Now we'll use a swab to collect the trace. To be able to look for some cells you might have left behind, most likely you didn't feel it, but you left some skin cells, and in those cells, we'll find your DNA.
Okay. Even with microcontacts, you can still find things.
Yes, of course.
And is that a long process? Do you only do it from time to time, or do you do it systematically, or?
Oh no, actually at crime scenes, at very, very important scenes, obviously all of that is done in the usual and regular way. And at crime scenes, it will take hours and hours of searching with investigative teams. There will be dozens, even hundreds of evidence seals that will be made and collected. Actually, because when we arrive at the crime scene, we don't know exactly what we're looking for. We know the story, one or two are dead, the perpetrator is on the run, and we wonder where he went. We try to understand that at least a little, but after all, what we're gonna collect, everything we're gonna see, hair traces, fibers, fingerprints, or objects and all that, we aren't sure if it will help the investigation, but if we leave them, they'll disappear or expire.
It probably doesn't last long, right?
Well, there you go. We take everything we can from the very beginning. Depending on the investigation's relevance, progress, and who is interviewed, testimonies from the entourage, friends, family, and professional contacts of a suspected person, for example. Based on that, we'll analyze certain things to determine their relevance.
Have you ever found the murder weapon or any weapons that way?
Yes, of course, obviously, yes.
Wow, really? So do you find fingerprints on knives or similar things?
Yeah, you find fingerprints on knives and DNA on knives and also the victim's blood on knives while someone is walking around with a knife on them. Except even if they say, oh no, I was out hunting and all. Well, no, yeah, but this blood here matches a cannelloni.
If he cleaned the blood, we could still...
With the blue star technique, we can still try to find it.
And earlier you were talking about traces of semen that you could find on clothes. It's the same, you can also find the...
Yes, on the clothes. If someone mentioned a sheet in a car, then we would take a sample from the sheet or the car seat cover. Or if that's the case, well, and have it analyzed in the lab, you know, it's the laboratories that will extract this physiological substance from the material in which it's embedded and then analyze it to find the DNA.
It's already happened that, I don't know, someone was accused and said, no, I didn't do anything. But in the end, you actually find those traces too.
So you can find fingerprint traces or someone's DNA at a crime scene without that person being the perpetrator.
Is that so? Okay.
Yes, the criminal brigade's investigation is also involved. We're going to have to, because you can say, well, yes, but me, Today we found your best friend, he was dead at his place, and we found your fingerprints, and you had a drink with him, and you're going to say, no, last night I just had a drink with my buddy and left. I don't know what happened afterward. You found him dead this morning, but it wasn't me. And it's true. So finding your traces and fingerprints at the scene doesn't mean they're from the perpetrator. We'll have to determine that with surveillance cameras, phone records. There's the whole investigation part. Of course, you'll have to account for your schedule, what you did, and so on. But yes, it's not just because of that.
Does it often happen that there's a murder and the person responsible isn't found? Maybe because someone is involved? But you don't have enough evidence to arrest them.
So it happens, of course it happens. So that's what we call cold cases, but very few out of, in Paris, the Paris region and French statistics, but Paris is what I know best. About 8 out of 10 cases are solved right away, often within the first hours or days. Because it's always, crime doesn't happen except with the screenwriters you mentioned earlier. It's not that sophisticated really. They're impulsive crimes like you owe me money and haven't paid me back after I've asked repeatedly. There, I'm a bit worked up and all, I punch you, you're dead, and that's it. I shouldn't have done it, but if you want, it wasn't premeditated. I didn't know before I got there that it would end up like that. Yeah, but that's it. It's arguments, it's losing your temper, it's run-ins in the street with cars. You see it yourself. It's stupid, but someone still died. That's just how it is. In contrast, it's extremely rare for someone to plan ahead, set it up carefully, and avoid leaving any traces. However, there are still some people, some cases that will last for months, even years. There are a few of them. Yes, that's true. And that's what employs a whole lot of staff like that in specific sections dedicated to these investigations.
Does it sometimes happen that you find, like years later, the matching DNA? Someone who will do something later?
Imagine you did something. It's been a long time since anyone has, I mean you, but not you specifically.
Yes. I surrender.
No, but imagine someone did. He's been committing crimes for months, but has never been reported, which shows how important reporting is. He was never caught or arrested. Today, everyone who is taken into custody as part of a crime or offense case is reported. They collect fingerprints, palm prints, DNA, front and profile photos, and a detailed appearance report. This information is entered into the national DNA and fingerprint databases. But someone who commits a crime and was never registered, no matter how much evidence we present from the crime scenes where he passed through, we will submit the traces we find at the crime scenes to the database, but we won't know him since he's never been in it or arrested for anything. But any fingerprints or DNA found at crime scenes will be entered into the database. The database will tell us, no, it's negative, we don't have anyone who matches that, but they will be kept as traces that are what we call unsolved in a database of unsolved traces. And one day, one fine day, you're a little less careful, you go have a drink with your friends, you drive home, you're a bit tipsy, boom, offense, it's an offense, drunk driving, you're driving under the influence, police station, they're going to take your information, they collect your fingerprints and DNA, then add your new record to the fingerprint and DNA databases. And then they'll tell us, oh, well, we have traces that match this guy that we found 2 or 3 months ago at a crime scene.
Exactly, yeah.
That's why people can be picked up multiple times, even if they weren't initially in the database.
That's crazy. And is the database you have, for example, big?
The fingerprints in the current national file, I think it's about 6 or 7 million people. So with 10 fingers, that's 60 to 70 million images. The database is powerful for computing, while DNA, though slightly over 5 million, is somewhat less so. Yeah, because the DNA database started later in '98, while the fingerprint database has been around since 1994. It was really effective.
And among them, there are many who still haven't been found. For example, they were collected at a crime scene. We still don't have the guy. I don't even know if we do.
Well then, for the unresolved samples we have, yes, it must be around 230,000 unresolved samples.
Incredible. You're talking in particular about a plane crash, the Germanwings plane crash in 2015. What happened at that moment? I think a plane crashed in the Alps. Is that correct?
First of all, for us, 2015 was a pivotal year in my department. It's an extraordinary year like we've never experienced before, since we had the whole series of attacks starting in January. In March, we had that plane crash in the Southern Alps. And in November, on the 13th, of course, in the evening, there were the Paris attacks that we all know about. We'll likely revisit all the year's attacks, but for March 2015, there are 7 of us from my department, what we call the Paris Forensic Identification Service. So there are 7 of us from my department going to the site of the Germanwings crash. Because we are part of a National Disaster Victim Identification Unit, this national unit is led for the police by the Central Service. And under their authority, under their supervision, we go to the site of the Germanwings crash. On site, we also find gendarmes who are part of the Criminal Research Institute of the National Gendarmerie, the Criminal Research Institute of the National Gendarmerie, which is now based in Cergy-Pontoise. And this National Victim Identification Unit is therefore made up of half police officers and half gendarmes. And these people who don't work together throughout the year on their different missions come together in the event of a major incident. For example, during the tsunami in 2004, we were together with them, and now we are going to the site over there, to the Germanwings crash.
What does it look like when you arrive there?
We found out a few days later, but it was the co-pilot who was depressed and crashed the plane into the mountain. It's a flight between Barcelona and Düsseldorf, and when he reached the French Alps, he crashed his plane. There were 150 deaths. When we arrive, there are several steps, several things to do, but for those who go up into the mountains, well, they don't find much. The plane is pulverized. You understand that a plane hitting a mountain at 800 kilometers per hour, there's not much left. The biggest parts that are there are the landing gear, the wheels you can see, and pieces of the fuselage a few square meters in size. Otherwise, after that is just small, scattered pieces across the mountain, and access is also difficult.
And what about the bodies in all this? How do they find them then?
They don't find whole bodies. There are no complete bodies. However, they do find body parts. So in this case, this mission that was set up and didn't last very long, not that long actually. For us, it lasted around 10 to 15 days, then took longer to identify the body parts with DNA. But in this case, about 3,000 body parts were collected at the site.
How does it work? How do you find those body parts?
Exactly. So the people who are sent to the mountains and who are going to be part of this body recovery team, so given the technical difficulty of the locations, we're paired up in teams of 2, often with mountain rescue police or members of the high mountain gendarmerie platoons. They hold and secure us at the end of a rope with helmets, suits, and harnesses. We head down the slope with bags to gather any human body parts we find. Once we reach a lower point, we place the bags that have been filled onto tops, on metal trays. Like mountain rescuers or those at the end of helicopters go to pick up the injured. Those tarps are then closed. All the bags that have been collected and airlifted by helicopter will be dropped off in the valley, on a field, a meadow. They will be taken in specific trucks and brought to a place that had been provided by the General Council. A hangar where they put all their tools, all their tractors and vehicles that had been cleared out. A bit like here, we had set up autopsy tables, and so all those tarps will be opened. And by all the specialists who are on an autopsy table, normally the forensic doctor, photographers, biologists, fingerprint technicians, that is those who handle fingerprints, and also odontologists who take care of the teeth. Well, all these body parts will be tracked, they will be assigned a number, and attempts will be made to identify them.
So actually, you make small groups of numbers and then you have to put them together, or not necessarily?
So since we don't know who all these body parts belong to, when they arrive here, all these numbers are tracked under one number. We will look for DNA in each of these body parts. And in the end, a few days later, of course, all the body parts that have the same DNA will be grouped together to be returned to the families.
What does that mean? Do you ever just find a hand or finger?
Exactly. A finger, skin, thigh, foot, hand, that's what I mean. And on the body parts that are more easily identified, since DNA is the main way to formally identify someone. But on a hand, you can find fingerprints, for example, or with dentistry, you can have a dental chart, work that has been done on a jaw. And with that, by getting in touch with possible dentists, people who are traveling on the plane, since in the end it's actually quite simple to do. We have what is called a closed list for the passengers of a plane, since we know the names of the passengers who are traveling, as well as the names of the crew members. And so all we have to do is get in touch with the families who will give us all the medical information about the missing people, their dentists, and so on. And by comparing the dental work that was done, if it was done by the dentist, with the work that the dentists observe on site, we can make the connections.
What does it look like? When you get there to a place, there's debris all over the ground. Is it visual? Do you see everything, a lot of bodies? Or on the contrary, is everything actually under the snow?
No, so there's no snow. When you get there, they are ravines made of earth and calcite. It's all gray, it's very crumbly. It's like walking a bit on piles of gravel, Going down. It's a 30% slope, so it's very, very difficult with low vegetation, but still pretty aggressive, little bushes. So we're equipped with suitable shoes, crampons on the shoes to hold on like in the mountains. So I'm telling you, wear gloves, masks, helmets, goggles, and so on. And we move forward in there to avoid getting cut, because there's also the danger and the risk of getting cut. Through these razor blades, the fuselage has become a multitude of razor blades, if you will. And in there we have to try to look for what could be a body part, but often we can't identify them just like that. You need a bit of experience, because in fact these are body parts that are rolled in the dirt and dust or in the mud when there are wetter and softer areas. So we're going to find body parts completely mixed together with still some pieces of fabric or electrical wires from the device.
There's another thing you talk about a bit in the book. It's the Paris attacks. November 13th is probably one of the darkest nights in France's recent history. Coordinated attacks, many deaths, chaos everywhere. How do you respond to an alert call?
Well, actually, just for the record, with my 7 colleagues I was with at German Wings in March, we were at the Stade de France that night, since we were invited by Lufthansa, which is the parent company of German Wings, where the plane crash was caused. And Lufthansa invited several hundred people from the Seine-les-Alpes town hall associations that helped the families, mountain rescue teams, and police officers and gendarmes who took part in identifying the bodies. They invited all those people first to a cocktail dinner at Luc Besson's place at the Cité du Cinéma, and afterwards everyone was taken by bus to the Stade de France for the friendly match between France and Germany. So we're in our stands, faces painted blue, white and red with our little flags. Until about 9:16 or 9:17, when the first explosions occurred that night of November 13 in Paris, starting at the stadium.
For those who don't remember very well, or who might not have the reference, what actually happened that night, concretely?
So that night, it was a coordinated attack, like you said, by suicide terrorists, actually, who attacked several festive places, meaning the Stade de France. There were 3 of them around fortunately they couldn't get inside the stadium, but they still tried to do it. They set off their explosive belts. They had explosive belts with nuts. Their belts are going to be around the Stade de France. There will be only one victim, fortunately. The three of them died, of course, but only one additional victim. And in Paris, there are also teams of suicide bombers who enter the Bataclan during a metal rock concert, and others who are going to attack terraces as well, where people are outside having something. There will be a total of 6 major attack sites in Paris.
At the same time, will you be at Stade de France later?
We're at the Stade de France when the explosions start. All right, I'm heading down into the stands and see other police teams arriving with cameras like a Betacam. You know, the big cameras actually that are usually there to monitor events like this, sporting events, to record footage. And I asked them what's going on. And at that point, they already have the information and they tell me that suicide bombers are blowing themselves up all over Paris. So then everything closes, all the gates of the stadium close around us. We manage to get ourselves out. We get some information from outside, from our families, our loved ones, who tell us that on television they're watching, they're seeing the assault at the Bataclan, actually what's happening at the Bataclan, etc. We'll be extracted and returned to our department at 36 Quai des Orfèvres. And then we're going to work all night to put together teams to go to the scene.
How does it work? Is it a briefing when you arrive early? How do they inform you?
So here we are, we leave the Stade de France, people are coming back from their homes. At that point, we consider them and we'll try even though this wasn't planned. Usually when we put teams together, they have shifts, we know who works with whom, what hours they're going to do, what equipment they'll have, and so on. Everything there is planned far ahead, but here it's not, so we must act immediately and adapt. And so now we're going to take into account the people who are coming back. We'll equip them, form teams, and mix experienced members with younger ones for coherence. And we're going to send these teams to the different locations as we are asked. We handle investigative services because we are the technical and scientific police. It's a service that assists investigations, an essential technical service nowadays, of course, but we always work alongside an investigative unit, and in this case, it's often the Parisian Criminal Brigade.
Where have you been sent, for example?
I didn't go out. I didn't go to the Bataclan or to the terraces. I stayed at headquarters, at my post. I worked at headquarters, and there I was in charge of forming these teams and then leading them.
How does it work? What do people see there? How do they manage?
When they arrive at the Bataclan, we, the technical and scientific police, will step in only after everything is secured and finished. First, we have to wait for the assault to take place. It's the Brigade de Recherche et d'Intervention who will enter the Bataclan. Then they will be supported by the research, assistance, intervention, deterrence, and so on. But once the assault is over, once the perpetrators are neutralized, then everything becomes calm again. The injured and surviving victims are evacuated to receive medical care and transported to hospitals. And only the dead, the deceased, remain at the scene. And then it's up to the criminal brigade and forensic identification to intervene, to cordon off the area, because a concert hall like that is huge. There are the stands, the pit in front, the streets, and the technical rooms all around. There are bodies everywhere, 90 bodies at the Bataclan, so you have to cordon off the area to make the crime scenes a bit more manageable. And then we assign different teams to each section so they can do what they know how to do, what they've been trained for, and photographs the layout of the place, biological sampling to try to identify first the suicide bombers and also the deceased victims.
So that means there were 90 bodies directly inside the building?
Yes, there were about 60 in the building itself and around it. Afterwards, they were everywhere, in technical rooms and on the streets.
Were there several attackers? Were there 2, 3?
Yes, there were 3 of them. There were 3 of them with Kalashnikovs and explosive belts. And so they coldly killed from the stage the people who were in the pit.
Did anyone tell you about horrors that night or anything like that?
My colleagues who went there, who took the videos and photos, obviously told us afterwards what happened. And besides, I had to listen to the Bataclan audio recording. A few days later, they gave us an audio recording from the Bataclan made by a sound technician. And when the shooting started, when the attackers entered the hall, he left, but the recording kept running. There were about 2.5 hours of recorded audio, so we were able to determine the entry of the terrorists and everything that happened up until the final assault and their neutralization.
What do you hear?
And so, well, here we can hear everything. We hear the screams, the cries, the sobs of the victims who are there, and also the words of the perpetrators who threatened them, who shout at them. Some are angry at President François Hollande, blaming France and him for the situation. All of this is happening because they want to defend their brothers in the Middle East who are being attacked and so on. They just use a lot of rhetoric. We hear all of that on the soundtrack, you know, and all of this will be handled by one of my colleagues who works in the technological traces section. We call it telephony, video, and sound. He will listen to this soundtrack. He will put it in the official report, since everything has to be written and attached to the judicial procedure carried out by the Criminal Investigation Unit, because in French law, the entire procedure is written. And he will ask me to go over it after him, to listen to parts he might not have understood well, and so on. I'll follow him and listen to this soundtrack too. In the end, he really did everything. He had done the job very well.
I didn't ask earlier, but about the plane crash, did anything shock you, or did you feel detached? Did you find anything that made you...
No, we're not detached. We're not detached from anything. I'm fine. I was psychologically able to handle it. It was almost at the end of my career. I had seen several dead people before. No, it was my first time trying to recover body parts in the mountains while hanging from a wire. When we intervene, it's usually in the city, on the street, or in a home, but not in situations like that. That really surprised and unsettled me. That is the physical difficulty of finding things and going to get them, already. We're not used to that. After all, a body is a body part is a body part. We've seen that before. And besides, we're never alone. We're never isolated. In the mountains, there were dozens and dozens of other people who were like us, who were searching, who were picking things up. It was the same at the autopsy tables, because after reaching the mountains, we had many tasks and jobs. It changed daily, so you're never truly alone. You're always part of a chain.
You mentioned it was near the end of your career, but early on, did you ever think, I didn't expect to see that? Did you come across anything shocking?
At the start of my career, I worked at a suburban Paris police station, handling minor cases, but I hadn't joined the judicial police yet. At the police station, you mainly handle daily tasks and go out to do fairly simple things. We also attended crime scenes, but we were immediately taken off the case, actually. We didn't handle those. The judicial police from Paris or Nanterre managed the more important cases. But actually, it always starts like that. It's kind of the same in every job, I think. You start with simple, easy things. We're supervised by the veterans, and we do what we're supposed to do. But they never let you go alone to that kind of disaster or anything like that. So after what happened in 2015, I had already been in the police for more than 30 years. So we don't have the same psychological approach as someone who's just starting out.
You mentioned an overdose death in St. Cloud.
In St. Cloud, that's right, I started there, you're right. That really affected me psychologically. Not because of how difficult the case was, but because of how shocking it was when we arrived. I remember very well, it was a beautiful house on the hills of St. Cloud there. It belonged to a young man who was about 30 years old. And when we arrived, the father was coming down the steps with his briefcase. He was about to get into his car to go to work, and he barely said hello to us. He just pointed upstairs, said, "He's up there," and left as if he didn't care. Only the young man's mother was at the hospital in tears and waiting for us. And
is he still going to work?
Yeah, he doesn't care. We come in and the mother explains everything to us. She tells us, yes, that's it, he fell into addictions, he's using drugs. It's been a long time, it's been several years now and everything. We ask her what the problem is, since nothing seems wrong around him. Financially, for example, you see? And then we learn that what he would have liked to do is be a gardener in life. His father never wanted that, because no one in the family becomes a gardener. He paid for his studies and sent him to top schools, but he didn't enjoy it. He wanted to be a gardener. And so that's how it ended. It's unbelievable. That really shocked me, even back then, 40 years ago. But for a young man to die because he can't manage to do something in life, simply because it's not in his family's social context, socio-cultural, etc., I can't believe it.
Ultimately, no one was to blame. He overdosed alone?
Yes, it was him. Yes, it was his increasingly strong addiction that ended his life. Actually, that's it. He let himself go. He let himself sink. And then, he lived in a small room that was all under the eaves, way up there in the attic up there that he had fixed up for himself. It was a small hovel in that lovely house, and everyone left him there. I don't really know. He was mostly hidden. No one cared for him, but that was normal.
How does it work when you die of an overdose? What is it? Do you stop breathing? What's the actual trigger?
That is, it's the purity of the heroin that's injected. Actually, it's too strong for what your body can handle. The more it's cut, the worse it is for your kidneys, liver, and more. They're going to filter all kinds of crap that they cut and put inside. But on the other hand, when it's ultra pure or actually too pure, well, it's true that for your heart, actually...
It's the heart that stops, actually.
Yes.
You mean the Saint-Denis raid on November 18th, 2015, right?
Following November 13th, indeed. November 13th was a Friday night. In Saint-Denis, research, assistance, intervention, deterrence launched an assault on Corbillon Street against the last 3 remaining terrorists. The leader of the attacks, one of his collaborators, his cousin, who actually found him that place to stay, are hiding in an apartment in a completely run-down building. And the research, assistance, intervention, deterrence launches the assault. Inside they are also equipped with explosive belts. And during the final assault, since they don't want to surrender, they activate an explosive belt which blows up the building and brings down the top of it. The mezzanine rooms, which are right above them, collapse and they fall into the room below. So we end up with a sort of layered mess like that, with furniture, rubble, and the bodies somewhere in the middle. And from Wednesday noon until Saturday noon, for 4 days and 3 nights, we're going to shore up the building and search through this layered mess, peeling it back layer by layer to recover the bodies and their equipment.
How does it work here? How is debris removed? How many people are involved? What is it?
Well, there were 3 people there. We were sure there were at least 3 people inside, so you have to bring in dumpsters for the rubble into the street. On top of all those layers, we made something like a diving board, so we could move forward and start digging from above. And anything uninteresting like a mattress or wardrobe door, there was the window in front that was open, and by tossing things out, they would fall 3 floors down into the dumpster for rubble.
What is it that you keep? What do you consider to be interesting?
Everything we find, like weapons, computer equipment, and all the electrical wires. For example, explosive belts, the remains of explosive belts that will be analyzed by laboratories to determine the composition of the explosive, and so on. We also find body parts, sometimes whole bodies, other times nearly cut in half. Because when an explosive belt that's placed around the waist explodes 3/4 of the time, it cuts people in half.
Is that all? Doesn't it make the person explode?
It depends, because he says since these are improvised devices, they're not made in a factory with a protocol and very precise measurements, so they're kind of put together haphazardly, if I may say so. When it explodes, it can blow off your head, tear off an arm, or cut someone in half. We experienced everything on November 13th. For example, on the night of November 13 at Le Comptoir Voltaire on Boulevard Voltaire, about 20 people are eating and drinking in this restaurant. One of the terrorists comes in like that. He stops in front of a table and starts to pray. Obviously, we know all this because there's a camera in the bar recording the whole scene. And he triggers it with a push button like this. He triggers his belt explodes. There are injured people, but no deaths nearby. He falls, dies, and someone will walk by. Seeing the situation from the outside, it's a first responder, a nurse, I think even a first responder. He's coming in to give him a cardiac massage to revive him, since he's the only one who died. But the explosive belt, they often have 2 parts, one in front and one in back. Here, the back part exploded, blowing off his entire back. You can see his entire spine, ribs, and everything from the back. And so the whole layer of skin was torn off. It killed him, but the front part didn't explode. The other person doing chest compressions was lucky because pressing could have triggered what was left. Since tricetone triperoxide and the substances used are very fragile and very unstable and can go off at any moment.
That's crazy.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. He realized he couldn't revive him, so he left, but he definitely escaped certain death.
Does the guy die instantly when he blows himself up or not?
Yes, because if you want, when a belt explodes, it's a belt that's made of a gel. It's like a gel. That's it. It's tricetone triperoxide, and first there's a layer of tape. They put bolt nuts side by side. It looks like a honeycomb. And when the tricetone triperoxide goes off, the goal is for the nuts to fly and kill as many people around as possible. Except this time, he was the one who took them inside. During the autopsies, we saw they resembled those from Saint-Denis, riddled with their own nuts. Because it's as if they were hit by dozens of projectiles at the same time inside their bodies.
When they enter that bar, do people see them coming?
Nothing at all, because nothing is happening around them. They didn't hear anything. They're not aware of what's going on around them. It's someone who comes in and just stands like that by a table. People nearby are surprised to see someone just standing next to them, but it only lasts a few dozen seconds.
After that, those people still survived.
There were no deaths at Comptoir Voltaire.
Were there similar things on the terraces?
Yes, there were others. There were deaths, a lot of deaths. Because actually, on the night of November 13th in Paris, there were 130 deaths that night. So 90 at the Bataclan, only 1 at the Stade de France. As I was telling you, there was only 1 victim at the Stade de France. And the rest, well, it was on the terraces in Paris, you know.
And how did it happen with the others?
When they deployed a team and made sure it was taking the Bataclan into account, they left by car and just stopped like that randomly at some terraces. And they actually sprayed with Kalashnikovs the people who were on the sidewalks.
When you were investigating the Saint Denis raid on November 19th, did you end up finding all the pieces, or on the contrary, things that we never found?
We found all the bodies, etc., the explosive belts, well, what was left of them, but we know how they were used. We found an automatic pistol that they had, so no, we found everything they had. It took a long time, but it didn't present any particular technical problems.
Earlier, you mentioned the 2004 Thailand tsunami. How many died? How are victims identified? What happens after identification?
Well, the tsunami is something else. It's also a case that happens internationally. That is to say, the tsunami in 2004 was a giant wave about 30 meters high that hit the coasts of Southeast Asia. So all of Malaysia, Indonesia, and then Thailand. For Thailand, that's where it caused the most problems for Europeans, because that's where, during the Christmas holidays, the most vacationers went. French, English, German, Swedish, and most of them are on the Thai coast around Phuket and north of Phuket. And there indeed the wave arrived while everyone was in their swimsuits or on the beaches or having breakfast early in the morning. And so there were 230,000 deaths along all the Southeast Asian coasts, but 5,000 in Thailand, where we are going to focus our research and identifications. Each country capable of doing so will send technical teams, advanced parties to go and see what's happening. So the French, the English, and others with some technical equipment. And this mission will begin and will continue throughout the year. This was on December 26, 2004. But the entire mission after identification will continue throughout 2025 until around the end of September or October to identify about 5,000 bodies. And there, everyone works for everyone, because with the bodies, we don't know who we're dealing with.
What do you see when you get there?
Well, I went there later. I went there in July. This unit, mentioned earlier for identifying disaster victims, includes police officers and gendarmes. I already told you about it. And we will take the people we need who have technical skills in police work, technical and scientific. And we will make two groups. One group will be called the antemortem group and will be in contact with the families, and the postmortem group, which will go to the scene of the disaster. So the antemortem group will be in contact with the French families who have reported missing persons. We will ask them everything concerning their loved ones. They will send us photos, give us their DNA so that we can compare the DNA of the bodies over there with theirs. The dentists who will send us dental x-rays. And on the other side, the postmortem group who go to the scene of the disaster, who will be responsible for recovering the bodies and performing the autopsies. They'll gather there not knowing who they're dealing with, just that it's a child, woman, or man. And there they will create a fingerprint database, a name database, and a DNA database for everyone. And each country will fill out the appropriate files for these missing persons. We, the French, the antemortem group, sent the files to the other side, and with specialized software we made the identifications.
How are bodies found after a tsunami? Are they usually dismembered or intact?
No, the bodies are intact there, the bodies are intact. We often think they die by drowning, but many also die from being knocked out, or because they are thrown by the force of the wave against objects. House walls, cars, trees that are there, they get fractures or things like that.
Did most of them die like that?
Yes, most of them died a bit stunned and also drowned. And the bodies decompose very quickly since it's already very hot. Over there it's summer and very hot, while here it's December. And bodies that are submerged like that for a certain amount of time in the water with the sun and the heat, the temperature. So bodies decompose, start to swell, change color, which means that after a while you can't really tell anymore, you can't see the difference. So the Thai people will take charge at first in a certain way of doing things, by putting dry ice on the bodies to cool them down a bit so they don't decompose too quickly. Afterwards, refrigerated containers will be sent to store all these bodies so they can be preserved while the autopsies are carried out.
And when you arrive, what do you do?
So when I go there, I go to follow up on all the cases that were opened on the French side for the French people. And so over there, there's a team of French police officers and gendarmes who are led by gendarmes there, and every 3 weeks it rotates, new teams arrive. And when I go there later, it's later, almost in July, all the autopsies have already been done. And all that's left is to identify, using fingerprints or DNA, the bodies that are still there. In fact, there's a huge center where more than 30 different nationalities of police are working. Everyone works for everyone else. And each specialist comes from their own country, bringing their expertise in fingerprints, DNA, or other areas. So unfortunately, because it's dramatic, but professionally, those were very, very enriching times for us, for this profession. It helped us move forward thanks to the exchanges we had with others. It also allowed us to develop new techniques.
What new techniques can you do?
Well, there are intervention techniques, intervention protocols. There are things we have to do in order, actually. We can't just do anything we want. And for the practitioners who were on those autopsy lines, for example, in Thailand, so it allowed them to see, when they were performing operations on the bodies, the autopsies, to observe different intervention techniques used by their colleagues. For example, if a finger or hand is damaged or has been in water for a while, the epidermis, the top skin layer, can peel off like a glove, resembling a glove's finger. And so sometimes you have to wait for the skin to peel off in order to take fingerprints, etc. But the Canadians said no, not at all. If we waited for the skin to peel, it wouldn't happen in Canada, so we boiled the fingers. So they boil using special techniques in order to peel off the skin. There you go, you see. So all of that is stuff we learn as we go along. It's part of the exchange. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You also wrote a book. We talked about it a little briefly. Maybe you can quickly explain to me what it's about? Where can we find it, maybe?
So, you can find it everywhere, in all bookstores, FNAC, on websites, everywhere you can order it. It's called Among the Dead, and it's published by Maroy Editions. And it deals a bit with the identification of disaster victims and the major cases we've known. Well, the ones I took part in, at least the tsunami in Thailand, the German wings plane crashes, or the Paris attacks. That's the entire identification process. And then that's to give people a little behind-the-scenes look at these cases and explain how it works. From the point of view of a technician and a field worker, that's what it's like when we discover these unusual scenes.
Incredible. Incredible. Gilles, thank you so much. Thank you very much. Of course, let me remind you that if you also want to appear on Storycube, we have an email that's showing right here. You're welcome to send a short summary of your experience or testimony. For everyone else, here are 2 episodes if you want to keep spending the evening with us. And don't hesitate, to let us know if you enjoyed this episode, if you want another one. Maybe. This was Noah.